When my parents were fighting for the liberation of my country, they were called terrorists. And I'm always mindful when it comes to this naming and labeling, that we don't end up in an overly simplistic concept of everything being terrorism. The greatest terror caused in our country is often by elites in the bureaucracy in government who get into cahoots with foreign interests and are willing to sell their children, great-grandchildren, and grandmothers in exchange for expensive cars, for investments overseas, for little shiny trinket, never factories that produce, never productive economy sectors, but trinkets that distinguish them as natives who did not transcend into understanding economy. I wish to call this what it is. It's not just greed. It's a splendid display of foolishness. You know, very few African countries have satellites. When there was a desire to actually ensure that you have your own satellites to help you with all sorts of data of intelligence and also gathering, it was torpedoed by some of our own people who said it's too expensive. And yet for us to understand what's happening in our geospatial space, even underground, to know how many or how much minerals we have, we now have to go to those that have the technology. So clearly, how do you do liberation when you depend on funding to do it, you depend on external data to do it, you depend on external expertise to do it, you depend on external technology to do it. I am not saying you should never use external resources and technology. It has now been discovered that the African gene, or the black gene, possesses a lot of solutions to both current and future global health challenges. So there is a contest over our genes. And we are sitting here, when we ask us where do we invest, we want to build a new parliament building with more seats. We want, come on, people. We can blame colonialism for many things, but I think we need to inspect our own heads. We have high unemployment rates, low productivity rates, we export unbeneficiated goods, we now have accentuated challenges related to poverty and inequality that are dramatized by others who want to exploit us some more. And we, faced with this moment, critical moment of leadership, are asked to decide what is important. And what is important is better cars, better buildings. Colonialism left us with weak institutions, with poor infrastructure, fragmented and divided society, and ideologies of divisionism. Colonialism called it divide and conquer. But in the immediate post-independence, it's divide, loot, divide, decimate, divide, extract, divide, and aid. You create a cyclical dependency, intellectual dependency, economic dependency, political dependency, security dependency. So that when you want to do your own security, you have to go external. When you want to do your own economy, you have to go external. When you want to do your own science, you have to go external. When you want to produce data, you have to go external. I am a very proud African, as you know. I have spent the last 30 years preaching Pan Africanism. What is Pan Africanism without capacity to produce own liberation? What is Pan Africanism without the capacity to think for yourself, to project the future through science, and etc.? Let's not conflate electoralism with democracy. Let's not conflate Western liberal democracy with democracy. The apartheid state in South Africa held free, fair, and regular elections where black people were not really included. This is how black people were included. They were asked amongst themselves in a black voters' roll to hold their own elections. So technically speaking, If you just are ticking boxes of liberal democracy, apartheid, that evil system, racist system, was a democratic system. In Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, where I belong or I was born, the Rhodesian government had an A voters roll, B voters roll, multi-parties. White parties contested for power. You will have people go to the extreme and say democracy doesn't work. No, they are talking about a particular type of democracy. For me, there is a simple issue. Governance has to be inclusive, it has to be participatory. People have to have a voice. The baby that does not cry dies in the mother's, the crib we used to carry babies on the back. So it's not enough to elect people. They fool around for 5 years, they steal, there are no consequences in the system. We wait for the body language of the empire before we move. So something happens in Rwanda, we first Pan Africanism here, but we look first, what is France doing, what is the US doing? When we see there's neutrality, then we come to embrace. So body language of the empire. Our leadership, I am sorry to have to say this, has had this duplicitous approach to solidarity, where if you listen to speeches, you'll think tomorrow will be liberation. When you look at action, there's such a paucity of action, you realize they are waiting for permission from France or from Britain or from the EU to act. We've been constructed with this persistent and constant fear of loss, that none of our leaders wish to anger the empire. So we wait to make sure that actions we believe are necessary are only taken when we are absolutely convinced the empire will not frown on it. We have an instinct of colonized people. The instinct of colonized people is this: first, make sure the master is not angry. Number two, you act to discipline the rest of the other natives. Number three, try and get the stars as the good boy or the good girl from the empire. Once they say this is a sign of a good leader or a good country. This idea of looking for a stamp of approval essentially means African solidarity will forever only be transacted via the prism of European and American, European and American certification. Certified from Europe or from Washington. Now you can be in solidarity with each other. We talk a lot. We talk a lot. There is a proverb in Uganda that says, if you make an agreement with a lion to become vegetarian, be rest assured you are the first vegetable the lion will eat. There is